There are some truths that are better left unknown. That's what I used to believe. But now, after everything that's happened, I realize the truth, no matter how painful, is always necessary if we ever want to be truly free. My name is Olivia. I'm 32 years old, a nurse at Denver Central Hospital. My job is to save lives, to care for people during their most vulnerable moments. Over the past 8 years, I've witnessed everything from miraculous births to tragic accidents. But nothing could have prepared me for the nightmare that was about to unfold inside my own family. Jason, my husband, is an architect. We met when he came into the ER after a minor accident at a construction site. I still remember the way he smiled whenever I changed the bandages on his arm. "Does it hurt?" I asked. "Not anymore, not with you here," he said. We got married a year later and had our daughter Ella, who's now 10. Our life was peaceful, so peaceful, that I almost forgot how fragile happiness could be. Until 2 months ago. It started with little things. Jason began coming home later than usual, not just once or twice, but almost every night. "New project," he explained. "Tough clients." I believed him. Why wouldn't I? 10 years together had built a trust I thought nothing could break. But then other signs appeared. Jason started locking his phone, something he'd never done before. I often caught him texting late at night, and whenever I asked, he always said it was work. But I noticed how quickly he would turn off the screen when I got too close. "You okay?" Sophie, my best friend, asked one morning as we were having coffee together. "You look exhausted." Sophie had moved in with us 3 months ago after she lost her job and couldn't afford rent. She'd been my best friend since college, always there during the worst times. So when she needed help, I didn't hesitate. "I'm fine," I replied. But the truth was, I was drowning in anxiety. "Work's just been a little stressful," I lied. Yet Sophie had started acting strange too. She often left the house without saying where she was going, sometimes coming back with puffy red eyes as if she'd been crying. And when Jason came home, I caught glimpses of secretive looks passing between the two of them. Not the kind of looks lovers would share, but the kind of looks between people hiding something. One night, after an early end to my night shift, I came home and heard Jason and Sophie whispering in the kitchen. "We have to tell her," Jason said, his voice tense. "I can't keep doing this." "Not yet," Sophie replied. "We need more time. Think about Ella." I stood there, frozen, my heart pounding in my chest. They were talking about me and about my daughter. My mind raced to the only conclusion that made sense. Jason was having an affair with my best friend. I quietly backed away, not wanting them to know I had overheard. That night, I lay in bed beside Jason, listening to his steady breathing, wondering how the man I'd trusted with my whole heart could betray me like this. But what haunted me even more was Ella's sudden change. She used to be such a bright, lively child, always eager to tell me about her day at school. Lately, though, she had become withdrawn, jumpy, plagued by frequent nightmares. One afternoon, while cleaning Ella's room, I found a stack of drawings hidden under her bed. In every picture, she had drawn our family, but something was wrong. In every single drawing, Ella stood apart from the rest of us, and there was always a tall, dark figure looming too close to her. "Who's this?" I asked, showing her one of the pictures. Ella stared at it, then looked up at me with wide, terrified eyes. "I don't want to talk about it," she whispered. "Daddy told me not to tell anyone." It felt like someone had poured a bucket of ice water over me. Jason had told her not to say anything. About what was he planning to leave me? Was he and Sophie plotting a new life without me? Then, one evening, after a grueling 12-hour shift, I came home and found a message on Jason's phone, a message he forgot to log out of. It was from Sophie. "I'll pick Ella up from school. I'm going to meet him one more time to get more information, Jason. We need to end this soon for Olivia." Every fear I had ever buried came crashing down at once. I clutched the edge of the kitchen counter just to stay upright. 10 years, a daughter, a life we built together. And now it all felt like it was crumbling before my eyes. I almost confronted Jason right then and there, but something, a tiny voice inside, urged me to wait, to find out the whole truth. Because if what I suspected was true, I needed to be ready, not just for myself, but for Ella. The next few days passed in a blur of anxiety. I went to work, cared for patients, smiled and chatted as if everything was normal. But inside, I was breaking apart. I watched every interaction between Jason and Sophie, searching for evidence of their betrayal, but they were careful, so careful. That night, lying in bed beside Jason, watching him sleep, I wondered if these were the last nights we would ever spend together. I had loved this man with all my heart. How could he do this to me? But what I didn't know was that the truth was far worse than anything I could have ever imagined. And it was about to shatter our lives in ways none of us could have seen coming. That night in Denver was bitterly cold. A massive snowstorm had swept through, blanketing the city and turning the streets into slippery, dangerous paths. I remember standing by the hospital window, watching the thick flurry of snowflakes falling, and wondering whether Jason would remember to pick Ella up from her piano class, like he had promised. It was my night shift, and I wouldn't be home until the following morning. Around 11 p.m., just as I was checking the vitals of an elderly patient, my phone buzzed. An unknown number. Normally I would have let it ring out, but something urged me to pick it up. "Hello?" I whispered, careful not to disturb the patient. "Am I speaking with Olivia Thompson?" A deep professional male voice came through. "Yes, this is Olivia," I replied, a wave of anxiety immediately tightening in my chest. "This is Chief Martinez with the Denver Police Department. I'm very sorry to inform you that your husband, Jason Thompson, your daughter, Ella Thompson, and a woman named Sophie Clark have been involved in a serious car accident." I stood frozen, as if time itself had stopped. The officer's voice sounded distant, muffled, like it was coming from somewhere far away. "They are being transported to Denver Central Hospital. Their conditions are critical, but they're alive." I don't remember what I said next. I only remember running, sprinting through the long white hallways of the hospital, my heart pounding violently in my chest. My mind swirled with 1,000 different thoughts, but they all centered around one thing: I couldn't lose them. No matter what had happened, no matter what doubts I had about Jason and Sophie, I couldn't bear the thought of losing them, of losing Ella. When I reached the emergency bay, the scene that unfolded before me felt like a nightmare brought to life. An ambulance had just pulled up, and nurses and doctors were rushing 3 stretchers inside. I recognized them instantly: Jason, Sophie, and oh God, my tiny precious Ella. "Jason!" I screamed, running toward them, but a coworker caught me, holding me back. "Olivia, let them work," Sarah said, her voice gentle but firm. "They're in the best hands." I stood there helpless, staring through the glass as the doctors worked feverishly over the still bodies of the 3 people I loved most. Jason had a large gash on his forehead, blood soaking the white bandage. Sophie looked like she had multiple fractures, her arm twisted at an unnatural angle. And Ella looked so small, so fragile on that oversized hospital bed. "What happened?" I choked out, my voice shaking. "How?" "Their car skidded on the ice," a police officer nearby explained. I hadn't even noticed him standing there. "They hit the median and rolled several times. Thankfully, they were all wearing seatbelts and the airbags deployed. If not..." He trailed off, but I knew what he meant. "But why were they even out there in the middle of a blizzard?" I asked, struggling to understand. The officer glanced at his notes. "From what we know, they were heading toward Oakwood Elementary, Ella's school. But why would they be going there in the middle of the night during a snowstorm?" Before I could ask more, Dr. Miller, the head of the ER, emerged from the trauma room where Jason was being treated. "Olivia," he said gravely, "I'll be honest, their conditions are serious. Jason has a severe head injury and possible internal bleeding. Sophie has multiple fractures, her arm, her collarbone. And Ella's injuries are the most concerning. There's significant trauma to her spine. We need to take all 3 into surgery immediately." I nodded, unable to speak. The world around me blurred and tilted. Sarah caught me just before my knees gave out. "I want to be with them," I finally whispered. "I'm a nurse. I can help." Dr. Miller shook his head. "No, Olivia. You're too close to this. We have our best team working on them. What you need to do now is stay calm and wait." I knew he was right, but it didn't ease the overwhelming helplessness clawing at me. I looked through the glass again and saw them prepping Ella for surgery. She wore a neck brace and an oxygen mask that nearly covered her tiny face. My heart shattered into 1,000 pieces. "May I conduct some preliminary questions tonight?" the police officer asked gently. "I know this isn't a good time, but we need to understand why they were heading to Oakwood Elementary." I could only nod numbly. Right now, the only thing that mattered was Ella, Jason, and Sophie. All the anger and betrayal I had felt earlier dissolved into a primal, desperate fear that I might lose them forever. "Did they have any personal belongings with them?" I asked, grasping at any clue. "Yes," the officer said. "We recovered 3 cell phones and a backpack your daughter's. Everything has been secured as evidence, but if you think it could help, I can let you look at them." Ella's backpack. A flicker of hope sparked inside me. Maybe there was anything that could explain all the strangeness of the past few months. "Yes," I said firmly. "I want to see it." But before he could retrieve anything, a nurse rushed out of the operating room, panic etched across her face. "We're losing Jason's vital signs," she cried. "And Ella, she's starting to seize. We need Dr. Miller now." The ground seemed to vanish beneath me. I stood there paralyzed by fear as everyone around me scrambled into action. In that moment, I was no longer a seasoned nurse, no longer someone trained to handle emergencies. I was just a wife, a mother, terrified that I was about to lose the people I loved most. I collapsed onto the floor, unable to stay standing. Tears streamed down my face as I watched through the glass, watching the team in their white coats fight to save my family. And in that instant, it hit me, no matter what Jason and Sophie had been hiding, no matter what secrets they had kept from me, I still loved them. I still needed them. "Please live," I whispered, a desperate prayer slipping from my lips. "Please live, and we'll figure everything else out later." But as I stared into the ER where the lives of my family now hung by the thinnest thread, I couldn't help but wonder, would I still have the chance to uncover the truth? And if I did, would it be a truth I was ready to face? I don't remember how long I sat in the waiting room. It could have been hours, maybe the whole night. Time moved painfully slow, each minute feeling like endless torture. Sarah had brought me a cup of coffee, but it quickly went cold in my hands. I couldn't force anything down, not when my family was fighting for their lives on operating tables just a few rooms away. Chief Martinez returned, carrying Ella's backpack and a clear evidence bag containing 3 phones, Jason's, Sophie's, and Ella's. "We believe this might help explain why they were at the school that late at night," he said, handing me Jason's phone. The screen was still unlocked, displaying a conversation between him and Sophie. My hands shook as I started to read Sophie. "I've gathered more evidence. Everyone at the school knows about it, but no one dares to speak up." Jason. "We have to tell Olivia. She's Ella's mother. She needs to know." Sophie. "I know, but I'm scared of how she'll react. She might confront him right away, and we still need more proof before going to the police." Jason. "I can't keep hiding this from her. Olivia's starting to suspect something. God, she might even think we're..." Sophie. "We'll tell her after we check Ella's locker. According to Lily, we might find more evidence there." The last message from Jason. "All right. We'll go tonight after Olivia leaves for her night shift. I hate bringing Ella along, but she insisted on coming." I looked up at Chief Martinez, my mind racing, my heart pounding. "Evidence," I whispered. "Evidence of what?" Martinez shook his head. "We're still piecing it together, but you might want to see this." He handed me Ella's little pink backpack. My hands trembled as I unzipped it. Inside were school books, a pencil case, a well-loved stuffed bunny, and a tiny blue USB stick. We examined the contents. Martinez said, his voice heavy with meaning. "You'll want to hear this." He pulled a small recorder from his pocket. "This is a copy of an audio file we found on the USB." When he pressed play, it felt as if my heart stopped beating. First came Ella's voice, soft, trembling, terrified. "I don't want to go to school anymore, Daddy." Jason's voice replied, gentle and concerned. "Why, sweetheart? You used to love school." "I'm scared of Mr. Johnson." Ella broke down. "Mr. Johnson." Your music teacher. Why are you scared of him? There was a long pause, then Ella's voice barely a whisper. He touches me, in weird ways. He said, it's our secret. He said, if I tell anyone, I'll be in big trouble. I burst into tears, covering my mouth with my hands. No, it couldn't be. My daughter had been, and I hadn't even known. We found several more recordings, Martinez said gently. It seems your husband and your friend had been secretly gathering evidence that Mr. Johnson, the music teacher at Oakwood, was abusing your daughter and possibly other students. But why didn't they tell me? I whispered, tears streaming down my face, based on what we gathered from the texts and recordings. Martinez explained carefully, they were afraid of how you might react. They knew you would do anything to protect your daughter. They were worried that if you confronted Johnson too soon without enough evidence, he might escape justice. They wanted to build a solid case first. Sophie wasn't Jason's lover. She was his ally. They had been trying to protect Ella and me. I had been so terribly, horribly wrong. We also did a preliminary check on Mr. Johnson, Martinez continued. He's been teaching at Oakwood for 3 years. There had been informal complaints about inappropriate behavior, but nothing solid enough to trigger a formal investigation until now. I thought back over the past few months, Ella's sudden withdrawal, her nightmares, the haunting drawings with that looming dark figure. How had I missed the signs? How could I, a trained nurse, someone supposed to recognize these things, have been so blind? I should have known, I whispered, the guilt crushing me. I should have protected her. Martinez rested a hand on my shoulder. You can't blame yourself. Monsters like Johnson are experts at hiding and intimidating their victims. What matters now is that we know and will make sure he's held accountable. I wiped my tears, struggling to refocus. So last night they went to the school to find more evidence in Ella's locker. Martinez nodded. It seems Johnson had been leaving notes and small gifts for his victims. Lily, another teacher, I believe, tipped them off about it. Suddenly, I remembered Lily, a young English teacher who had dined with us a few times. She and Sophie had become friends. We also found more evidence on Sophie's phone, Martinez said, showing me pictures on his screen, letters, gifts, things they had found in Ella's locker just before the crash. I stared at the images in growing horror. Handwritten notes with inappropriate language, a tiny bracelet with a heart charm, even covert photos of Ella. Oh God, I whispered, nausea rising in my throat. How did we not see this sooner? Johnson threatened the kids to keep silent, Martinez explained. But from what we understand, Ella finally confided in Jason 2 months ago after Johnson became bolder. 2 months. Exactly when everything started unraveling at home, when Jason started staying out late, when Ella grew more fearful, when Jason and Sophie's secret meetings began. We arrested Johnson this morning, Martinez said firmly. He's in custody now. With this evidence, and now that other victims are coming forward, he won't escape this time. I nodded, feeling a mix of overwhelming relief and devastation. Ella's abuser would face justice, but the cost to my family. Mrs. Thompson. A voice interrupted my thoughts. I looked up and saw Dr. Miller standing there, his face grave. I shot to my feet, my heart racing. How are they? We managed to stabilize them, he said, and I exhaled a shaky breath. But I won't sugarcoat it. Their conditions are still critical. Jason suffered a severe brain injury. We had to perform surgery to relieve pressure in his skull. Sophie has multiple fractures, including a spinal fracture, but thankfully no spinal cord damage. As for Ella, he paused, and I felt my heart stop. Ella suffered significant internal injuries. We had to remove her spleen and stop bleeding from her liver. She also has a broken femur and several fractured ribs, but the biggest concern is her brain trauma. She's currently in a coma. I staggered, my knees buckling. A coma? When will she wake up, doctor? Miller shook his head softly. We don't know. It could be hours, days, or longer. Or never. The words he didn't say echoed in my mind. Can I see them? I asked, voice trembling. They're being moved to the ICU. You'll be able to see them once they're settled. A nurse will come for you. After Dr. Miller left, I turned back to Chief Martinez. "I need to know everything," I said hoarsely. "Please show me everything you have." For the next hour, Martinez showed me everything Jason and Sophie had collected Ella's secret recordings, confidential interviews Sophie had conducted with other parents who suspected their children had been harmed, and a journal Jason had kept documenting every change he noticed in Ella. I read Jason's heartbreaking words, "I don't know how to tell Olivia. It will destroy her. She'll blame herself for not seeing the signs." But how could she have known? How could any of us have known? Sophie says we need irrefutable evidence before confronting Johnson or going to the police. She's right. But I hate hiding this from Olivia. I can see the suspicion growing in her eyes. God, she might even think I'm cheating on her. I have to tell her the truth. But how do you tell the woman you love that her little girl has been hurt in the most horrific way imaginable? Tears poured down my face as I closed the journal. Jason had been trying to protect me, to protect Ella, and I had doubted him. I had thought he was betraying me. "I misunderstood everything," I whispered. "I thought my husband was cheating, but he was fighting to save our daughter." Martinez nodded with quiet understanding. "Sometimes," he said, "the things people do in secret are the bravest acts of love." Just then a nurse entered the waiting room. "Mrs. Thompson, your family's ready. You can see them now." I stood, wiped my tears, and took a deep, steadying breath. Now that I knew the truth, I had to be strong for Jason, for Sophie, and most of all for Ella. "Thank you, Chief Martinez," I said, shaking his hand firmly. "I owe you everything." "We'll keep fighting," he promised, "and we'll make sure that man never hurts another child again." As I followed the nurse toward the ICU, my heart was a storm of emotions: anger, gratitude, guilt, hope, but above all, a deep, soul-shaking fear that even though the truth had been uncovered, I might still lose the people I loved most, and that was a truth I wasn't sure I was ready to face. When I stepped into the ICU, the sight of my family motionless and surrounded by machines took my breath away. I had spent years saving lives, but nothing prepared me for this helplessness. Now I wasn't a nurse, just a wife, a mother clinging to hope. I approached Ella first. So small, so fragile, tangled in IVs and breathing tubes. I gently held her tiny hand. "Mommy's here, sweetheart," I whispered, choking back tears. "I know everything now. I'm so sorry I didn't protect you. I promise no one will ever hurt you again." I turned to Sophie, battered her face, bruised her arm, immobilized in metal braces. "Thank you for protecting Ella," I said through tears. "Forgive me for doubting you. Please wake up Sophie." Finally, Jason. My husband unconscious, his head bandaged, monitored by blinking machines. I clutched his hand tightly. "I know the truth, Jason. I'm sorry for suspecting you. Please, come back to us." Hours passed. I stayed whispering to them, telling stories, holding their hands, praying. Nurses came and went, adjusting meds, checking vitals. Then a tiny squeeze from Ella's hand. "Ella!" I gasped. She squeezed again. Dr. Miller hurried in, confirming it. "It's a good sign. She's starting to respond." Not long after, Sophie stirred too. Her eyelids fluttered open, confusion in her gaze. "Olivia," she rasped. "I'm here," I said, tears flooding my eyes. I reassured her Jason and Ella were alive. When she tried to explain about the evidence, I gently stopped her. "I know. Johnson's been arrested. You did it, Sophie. You protected Ella." Later, Jason showed signs of waking. When his eyes opened, dazed and glassy, I rushed to him. "Don't try to talk," I whispered, stroking his hair. "I know everything now. I love you even more for what you did." In the days that followed, they slowly stabilized. Ella fully regained consciousness by day 3, still weak and scared. Sophie started brief physical therapy sessions. Jason, the most severely injured, showed steady recovery, no permanent brain damage. Meanwhile, Chief Martinez kept me updated. Johnson had been charged, denied bail. Other victims came forward. Oakwood School plunged into a scandal with top administrators under investigation for negligence. A week after the accident, while reading to Ella, she whispered, "Mommy, I'm sorry. I should have told you about Mr. Johnson." Tears filled my eyes as I hugged her. "You have nothing to apologize for, sweetheart. He lied to you. Mommy believes you. Mommy will always protect you." Ella revealed how Johnson threatened her and her best friend, Lucy. That fear had kept her silent until she finally confided in Jason, who then teamed up with Sophie. Hearing it broke my heart, but also filled me with pride. "You were so brave, Ella. Thanks to you, he'll never hurt anyone again." When she asked if she had to return to Oakwood, I assured her, "No, we're moving somewhere new, somewhere safe together." That night, I sat with Jason, now able to speak, though still weak. "I'm so sorry I hid the truth," he said, voice cracking. "I thought if we had enough proof we could protect Ella and you." I kissed his forehead gently. "There's nothing to forgive. You did what you had to do to protect our family, and I love you all the more for it." We talked about starting over somewhere sunny, maybe California or Florida. A fresh beginning. Chief Martinez confirmed Johnson's full confession. He faced decades behind bars. Oakwood's leadership was being purged. Families banded together to support one another. Sophie, once recovered, decided to advocate for children's rights, using her experience to help others. As I sat by Jason's bedside, his hand in mine, I realized we had been broken. We had been hurt. But we were still here, still together. The truth had almost destroyed us, but it also set us free. And with love, courage, and time, I knew we would heal. 1 year later, sunlight poured into our new California home. I stood in the kitchen watching Jason and Ella playing by the beach, their laughter carrying on the breeze, a sound I once feared I'd never hear again. "Your lemonade?" Sophie said, placing a glass beside me. She looked healthy and radiant, proudly wearing a t-shirt that read, "Protecting children is everyone's responsibility." The nonprofit she launched 6 months ago was gaining momentum. "Thanks," I smiled, sipping. "Did you hear back from Senator Bishop about the new bill?" Sophie nodded, eyes bright. "They want me to testify next month. If it passes, schools will be required to run stricter background checks and report any abuse claims immediately." I smiled with pride. "You'll be amazing. No one could tell this story better." Moving here was the best decision we made. The warm climate healed both visible and invisible wounds. I found work at a local hospital. Jason worked remotely. Ella started a new school with a strong support system. Sophie lived a few blocks away, a true part of our family now. "Ella's final therapy session is this Friday," I said, eyes on my daughter building sandcastles with Jason. "Dr. Sharma says she's made incredible progress." "She's a little warrior," Sophie said warmly. "All of you are." The first few months had been brutal nightmares, panic attacks, guilt. But slowly, with patience and love, we rebuilt. Not back to who we were, but into something stronger, wiser. "Can you believe Johnson's trial is next week?" Sophie asked. I nodded, a chill running through me. "Jason and I are debating whether Ella should testify. Dr. Sharma believes it might help her heal, but we're still worried." "She won't face him alone," Sophie reminded me. "She'll see she's not alone at all." Over 10 families had come forward. Johnson had abused students for years across multiple schools. Oakwood's leadership was ousted. Change was sweeping through education policies sparked by unimaginable pain, but bringing real hope. "I just don't want Ella to suffer anymore," I said softly. Sophie squeezed my shoulder. "Sometimes facing our fears is how we conquer them. Ella's stronger than any of us ever imagined." In the past months, Ella had blossomed, speaking in online support groups, offering courage to others. At just 11 years old, she carried wisdom far beyond her years. The front door opened. Jason entered, carrying Ella, both dripping with seawater and laughter. "Who's ready for lunch?" he grinned. "I'm starving," Ella cried, jumping down. "A whole whale," she joked. Jason laughed, ruffling her hair. Sophie winked. "That's called a metaphor, remember?" Ella beamed, proud of her growing vocabulary. Sophie's tutoring had helped Ella reclaim more than just her words. She had found her confidence again. As we sat down for lunch, my phone buzzed. It was Captain Martinez. "Olivia," he said. "Johnson just pleaded guilty." Tears welled in my eyes. "So Ella won't have to testify?" "No child will. It's over." Relief flooded me. "Thank you, Captain. Thank you for everything." When I hung up, I turned to my family. "Johnson confessed," I said, voice trembling with emotion. "It's truly over." Ella ran into my arms. "We can really forget him now, Mommy?" I hugged her tightly. "Yes, sweetheart. We can move forward now, free." Jason, Sophie, and I wrapped our arms around Ella, holding each other fiercely. We had been through hell and back, broken, scarred, but undefeated. In the months that followed, life found a new rhythm. Johnson was sentenced to 30 years. Oakwood was rebuilt with stronger protections. Sophie's advocacy bill passed, changing lives nationwide. Ella thrived at her new school, even enrolling in art classes, something she had once feared. Jason and I rebuilt our marriage deeper and more honest than ever before. One evening, sitting on our porch, Jason squeezed my hand. "Did you ever think we'd make it?" he asked. I shook my head. "There were days I thought we lost everything, but now I see we never lost what mattered most." "What's that?" he asked, smiling softly in the twilight. "Love, courage, truth, and each other," I answered. From inside, we heard Sophie and Ella laughing together, the sweetest sound. "I once thought you were cheating," I said quietly, "but the truth, painful as it was, set us free." Jason nodded. "The truth can hurt, but it can also heal and rebuild." I leaned into him, feeling his steady heartbeat. "I love you, Jason, more than ever." "I love you too," he whispered. "Always." Our journey wasn't easy. There would still be hard days ahead. But with love, truth, and each other, we had everything we needed to keep moving forward.